Later today, I'll be dropping my unboxing video of AirPods Max, which I finally got my hands on. Just kidding! Oh my god, you guys fall for anything these days. So dang gullible. These are not AirPods Max. But while I'm waiting for AirPods Max to arrive, I wanted to talk about some leaks that are dropping for the next generation budget iPad, the iPad 9, as some of you may refer to it. And you can decide for yourselves whether or not this version is worth waiting for. Let's begin. So if you're in the market for a budget iPad because you're sick of hearing of $550 over-ear headphones, the next generation does actually sound like a pretty interesting leap. So there's a few changes coming from the 8 to the 9 that are rumored. Of course, rumored and leaks, so take all this with a grain of salt. It's not going to be fact. But these reports are saying to expect a larger 10.5-inch display with the same footprint, so just meaning thinner bezels than the iPad 8. Also rocking the A13 chip, so a CPU and GPU improvement there, as well as a thinner overall design. And if you're thinking to yourself these specifications sound somewhat familiar, that's because they are. What we're basically pitching in today's video is essentially the iPad Air 3 except with an A13 chip. Other than that, sounds like it should be pretty much the exact same design. It'll be the same chassis, same size display, same size bezels, and by recycling Apple's old assembly line for the iPad Air, they can bring down the price to a more affordable point where it won't cannibalize the sales of course, the recently announced iPad Air and of course the iPad Pros, which will soon be getting mini LED displays next year, and probably the A14X chip, which will be insane. And the iPad Air will have the A14 chip with a 60Hz display and slightly thicker bezels at 10.9 inches. And then this budget department will then be replaced with basically a rebranded version of the iPad Air 3, except Apple will just call it iPad 9th generation. But the big question I have for the iPad 9 that the article has not been super clear about, and the report has not given us any information on, is will the display be freaking laminated? We've been asking ourselves this for the longest time, okay? We've always had budget iPads with non-laminated displays ever since 2017. When eventually will having a laminated display come to the affordable lineup? Which, if you're not used to a laminated display, it's not really that big a deal. You know, if you bought a budget iPad before and you've used it for a while and you're comfortable with it, you won't really notice or care that much that it's non-laminated. But I will say, as soon as you get a laminated display and as soon as you get used to having a laminated display, then it starts to become a lot more important and you get comfortable with it, and then going backwards is really, really hard. At least for me it was, because I've gotten so comfortable with having the pixels and the display and the glass right there, and the fact that when you go to a budget iPad there's this big gap in between the glass and the display, it just throws you off and it looks dated and ugly. So my hope is that because this design is actually thinner and they're reusing the assembly lines from the iPad Air 3, that means it can be a laminated display. So if that was one of the big things preventing you from upgrading your iPad and it made you not want to get either the iPad 7 or 8 and wanted to wait for what was in store for the 9, maybe this could be the year to wait for it, because personally I think it makes a big difference. And of course it'll still have Touch ID and the headphone jack and probably speakers just on one side. Sadly, I doubt they'll bring speakers to the other side like they did on the Air 4. But the other confusion I'm having with this report is it's saying the iPad 9 will be shipping in the spring of 2021, which seems pretty soon, especially given the iPad 8 just launched in September. But at the same time, it did ship with an A12 chip, which compared to, I don't know, other iPhones in the lineup, that's about as old as they get. You know, the only iPhone Apple is still selling with an A12 chip is the XR, and I imagine that that chip is going to be either close to being pushed off the site next year or at least on the chopping block, because again, that's the oldest CPU Apple is still shipping in the iPhone lineup. Even the SE has an A13 chip. So perhaps because the iPad 8 upgrade was so incredibly minor and it was literally just, hey, have an A12 chip. Okay, you're welcome. Maybe because of that, they're like, it's not really that big a deal if we do another iPad refresh 6 months later. Of course, this will tick off all of you iPad 8 owners out there. So for you guys, I apologize. But it's not necessarily that I think devices with the A12 chip are going to stop getting software updates next year. That's not what I'm saying. I'm sure they'll continue to get software updates for many years to come. But if Apple is still selling a hardware product on their website, I imagine they want to make sure that it will continue to get software updates for many years to come. They don't want to be selling iPads that get discontinued a year later. So if this is the lineup we got to get ready for moving into 2021, still with an A12 chip, I don't know, maybe it makes sense to refresh it in the spring. But at the same time, I do find it quite bizarre, because if they were planning on doing this from the beginning, why release the iPad 8 at all? You know, just wait a little bit longer and save your big iPad changes for the spring. But who knows, Apple maybe wanted to catch that holiday rush for whatever reason, or they needed something else to announce at the September event, and they were like, we have like a 10-minute block to get this keynote to an hour, so let's just drop an iPad refresh. But oh yeah, the other good news about this iPad 9 rumor is that it's supposed to come with 64 gigs of storage standard, which should make this iPad a pretty dang good deal, especially if the rumors are saying it should stay around the same starting price, so $329 for everybody and $299 for education discount, which is amazing considering this iPad is going to come with a 20-watt USB-C brick, unlike the iPhones, USB-C to Lightning cable, 64 gigs of storage standard, 4 gigs of RAM, and a laminated 10.5-inch display in a thinner design, and that thinner design part they talked about is the main reason I feel like this could be a laminated display, because in years prior, you know, they made devices like the iPad Air 2, which were thinner than the Air, but had a laminated display, and then once they started mass producing the cheaper iPads, they had to make them a little bit thicker, which is I think how they achieved the non-laminated design, and for some reason, skipping the lamination process is able to save them a bunch of money on manufacturing. So if they somehow miraculously found a way to laminate the display and keep the price low, I think this is going to be a really, really popular iPad a lot of people could end up going with. And of course, this iPad would still be compatible with all the old budget iPads, smart keyboards, and Apple Pencil, so it's not like you'd have to buy new cases. It would still be the same footprint as those older iPads, just a little bit less chunk on the back, which is cool. And I'll be really bummed out if it turns out it's a thinner design, but still non-laminated, and I hate that that still has to be a thing in the lineup. So the sooner we can get rid of that, the better, and hopefully the price doesn't suffer from it, and storage upgrades too. So in my opinion, if you're not in a big rush to upgrade your iPad, you might want to hold off on the 8 if more rumors and leaks about this type of budget iPad come forward. But obviously it's all in rumor territory, so if you're in desperate need of an iPad like right now, it still could be many months away before the iPad 9 actually launches. But if you're curious for what's in store next, that's what it could be. Feel free to let me know what you guys think of an iPad 9 refresh. What would you like added to it? For me, I just want USB-C on more things, but this is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.